Have you ever heard of a man whose tomb tells time? Not a legend, not a metaphor, a real grave, with a real message, crafted by a watchmaker who knew how to speak in the language of gears, springs, and seconds. In a quiet village in England, tucked beside an old stone church, lies a tomb unlike any other. It doesn't have grand statues or golden writing, but what it does have is something much more powerful, a message so clever, so haunting, that people are still talking about it over 200 years later. They call it the tomb of the Clockmaker. But who was this man? Why did he write his own life like a machine? And how did his final words turn him into an internet mystery, a local legend, and maybe something more? This isn't just a story about timepieces. It's about time itself, the people who try to master it, and the ones who get remembered for it. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's wind back the clock to meet the man who built his own legacy, one tick at a time. Now, let's talk about this tomb, because it's not just a grave, it's a riddle, a poem, and a time machine all rolled into one. The man buried here is George Routley, a watchmaker from the 1700s. His tombstone, found in a small churchyard in Lidford, Devon, is simple, but the words carved into it, anything but. It starts like this: "Here lies, in a horizontal position, the outside case of George Routley, watchmaker." Right away, you can feel it. This isn't your typical rest in peace. He's comparing his body to a watch case, like he's just the shell, and the real workings, his soul, have moved on. And then it goes deeper. Integrity was the mainspring, and prudence the regulator of all the actions of his life. He's literally describing his personality using the parts of a clock. Integrity, the mainspring. That's the thing that powers the whole system. Prudence, the regulator. That's what keeps everything running smoothly, not too fast, not too slow. He even says he never went wrong, except when set a-going by people who did not know his key. That's brilliant. He's saying he only messed up when people wound him up the wrong way, literally. It's a clever way of saying he was dependable, unless people pushed his buttons. By the time you finish reading it, you realize something. This isn't just an epitaph. It's a final masterpiece, written by a man who understood time better than most of us ever will. So, who exactly was George Routley? Well, truth be told, there's not a massive archive of books written about him. He wasn't a king or a scientist or a celebrity of his time. He was just a humble watchmaker. But maybe that's what makes his story so fascinating. He lived during the late 1700s in a quiet part of England, working with tools so precise they could barely be seen by the naked eye. Day after day, he sat at his bench, crafting the tiny gears and springs that made the world run on time, back when clocks weren't just decorations, but lifelines. He wasn't famous. He didn't invent anything groundbreaking, but what he did do was master his craft. People in the village trusted him. They brought him their broken watches, and he gave them back not just working machines, but reliability, peace of mind. In an age before electricity, before phones, before the internet, time was power. And George helped people hold on to it. And maybe that's why his epitaph hit so hard. It wasn't written by someone trying to sound poetic. It wasn't carved by a historian or a poet. It sounds like him. You can almost imagine George writing it himself, maybe scribbling the words down in the back of his workshop, between clock repairs. It's playful, it's proud, it's thoughtful. It tells us what he valued: integrity, prudence, generosity. It tells us how he saw the world, as something mechanical but beautiful. And it tells us how he saw himself, not just as a man, but as a piece of a much bigger machine. And think about this, the fact that we're talking about him now, over 200 years later, means it worked. His message, his voice, his humor, it all survived. In a quiet graveyard in Devon, a man who spent his life fixing time found a way to beat it. That's not just craftsmanship, that's legacy. What makes George Routley's tomb so powerful isn't just the words, it's the way he uses them. He doesn't say, "I was a good man." He says, "Integrity was the mainspring of my life." He doesn't say, "I made mistakes." He says, "I only went wrong when set a-going by people who didn't know my key." See what's happening here? He's not just writing an epitaph, he's speaking in the language of time. To George, life itself was like a clock. Every decision, every relationship, every moment, all part of a mechanism ticking away with purpose. And he describes himself the same way he would describe one of his watches, with parts, precision, and personality. Think about it. A mainspring powers the watch. He says his power was integrity. A regulator keeps the time steady. His was prudence. Even in death, he imagined being thoroughly cleaned, repaired, and set a-going in the world to come. It's beautiful, it's funny, it's a little bit eerie, and yet, it makes perfect sense, because time was the world George understood best. It was his craft, his career, and clearly, it was his way of understanding life itself. And honestly, isn't that what we all do? We use what we know to explain what we feel. For George, that was clocks. George Routley's tomb is special. No doubt about that. But he's not the only clockmaker whose final resting place tells a story. Across England, and even across the ocean, there are other graves that speak to the deep connection between time, craft, and legacy. Take John Harrison, for example. He was a genius watchmaker who lived in the 1700s, the same century as George. But Harrison's story was even bigger. He solved one of the greatest problems of his time: how to find longitude at sea. Thanks to his invention, the marine chronometer, sailors could navigate safely across oceans. No more lost ships, no more deadly journeys. His tomb, in Hampstead, London, is simple but meaningful. A memorial in Westminster Abbey honors him as one of the greatest inventors of all time, a man who literally changed how we understand the world and time. Then there's Thomas Tompion, known as the father of English clockmaking. He's buried inside Westminster Abbey, one of the most famous resting places in the world. Tompion's clocks were so precise and beautiful, kings and queens wanted them. He set the standards for clockmaking that lasted centuries. His grave is a quiet tribute to a man who mastered the art of making time. And even across the Atlantic, in the United States, there's William Semelius, called the Dean of American Watchmakers. His grave features tiny clocks, frozen at specific times, maybe the exact moments of passing. It's a powerful reminder of how these clockmakers, who spent their lives measuring time, faced it themselves in the end. What connects all these graves isn't just a profession, it's a legacy, a shared passion for precision, craft, and understanding a force that controls us all, time itself. Each tomb tells a story, not just of the person, but of humanity's endless fascination with the ticking seconds that shape our lives. What do these clockmakers and their graves really remind us of? It's more than just gears and springs. It's about legacy, the way we try to leave a mark on a world that's always moving forward, never waiting. Clockmakers spend their lives measuring time, breaking it down into seconds, minutes, hours. But in the end, time measures them back. There's a beautiful, almost poetic irony in that. These men, masters of precision and control, were also deeply aware that their own time was limited. Their tombs are like final clocks ticking away the last moments, frozen in stone. And their epitaphs? Little reminders that even though the clock stops for us, the stories we leave behind don't. It makes you think, why are we so obsessed with time? Is it the fear that it's slipping away too fast? Or the hope that if we understand it better, maybe we can live better? For George Routley and his fellow clockmakers, time wasn't just a tool. It was a language, one they spoke fluently. And through that language, they tried to make sense of life, death, and what comes after. In a way, their graves aren't just about remembering the past. They're about reminding us to pay attention to the time we have, to live with purpose, like a finely tuned clock, balanced, meaningful, and true. So, why does George Routley's tomb still capture our attention more than 2 centuries later? It's not just an old stone with words. It's a story that speaks across time, connecting us to a man who lived, loved, and crafted in a very different world. For locals in Lidford, that tomb is a piece of their history, a symbol of pride. People visit, curious to see a grave that talks about life in the language of clocks, something unique and unforgettable. But beyond that, the tomb has found a new life online. It's become a symbol for all of us who feel caught in the rush of modern life, always chasing time, trying to hold on to it. When you read George's words, you're reminded of something simple. That even though time moves on, the values we live by, integrity, kindness, patience, can last forever. The tomb stands like a quiet friend, whispering a message we all need. Live your time well. Be the mainspring of your own life. Don't let others wind you up the wrong way. In a world full of fast clocks and fast lives, maybe that's exactly why the tomb matters. It's a reminder that even the smallest stories, like that of a humble watchmaker, can leave a mark big enough to outlast centuries. So, what can George Routley's tomb teach us today? So, whatever your story is, whatever your craft or passion, remember this watchmaker's lesson. Be the mainspring of your own life. Keep your gears turning with purpose and care, and don't forget to wind yourself with a little humor along the way. Because in the end, it's those moments, the little ticks and tocks of everyday life, that add up to something truly unforgettable. And there you have it, the story of George Routley, the watchmaker whose tomb still speaks to us across centuries. A man who turned his life into a clock and his legacy into a message about time, integrity, and the moments that truly matter. So, here's a question for you to think about. If your life were written in clockwork, what would your gears say? If this story wound up your curiosity, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who loves a good mystery. Or just a reminder to treasure time. Thanks for watching, and remember, time is precious. Make every second count. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.